Hey there, I'm Christina Johnson, Certified Transformational Nutrition Coach, and I thought in the spirit of the holidays and holiday cooking and baking that I would share with you 5 of my favorite sweeteners that I use as alternatives to regular table sugar. And I think these are all great alternatives. You probably have heard of a couple of them before, but I'm curious to hear which ones you use and which ones you want to try. So I'll share these 5 sweeteners with you, and then I also have just a couple extra tips that I want to share with you on how to use these in your holiday baking. But before I begin and start sharing the first sweetener with you, I do have one little word of warning. And this is because, not too long ago, I think it was a couple months ago, I was sharing a recipe, a healthier recipe, I think for a cookie with a friend. And she looked over the recipe and she said, "Oh, this looks so great. I can't wait to make it. And I love that it doesn't have any sugar in it." But the recipe clearly had a good amount of honey in it. And that was just a really good reminder to me that it's easy to have that misconception that just because something is made with honey or maple syrup or a healthier form of sugar, that it's sugar-free. So here's just what I want you to know before I share these with you, and that is that this is still forms of sugar. They could still trigger sugar cravings. They can still, mess with your blood sugar levels. So just please know that you still don't want to eat 10 cookies just because it's made with almond flour and honey as opposed to regular sugar. So they do still have sugar, but they also usually have some other vitamins and minerals and just different nutrients that make them a little healthier. They are less processed. They are less likely to be genetically modified. They will have less of an impact on your blood sugar levels. So that's some of the reasons why I prefer to use these 5 sweeteners. And I also make sure that I eat them in moderation. They're not a part of my everyday diet all year round, but definitely during this time of year because I love holiday baking. I feel like that is just part of the joy of this time of year. And so I don't want to miss out on that completely. And so that's why I go to these sweeteners instead. So here we go. Here's the first one. It's the one I already mentioned. It's honey. And I know this is probably showing up backwards for you. I'm sorry. But when I buy honey, I look for raw, local honey. And again, because it's raw, it hasn't been heated and processed as much, so it retains more of its natural nutrients. However, if you are baking and you're going to heat up the honey, then raw doesn't matter so much because those nutrients will get heated up anyway. So that's the first sweetener that I like to use. It's probably the one I use most is honey. The second one that I use a lot is maple syrup. This is just one that I bought at Costco. The key is when you're looking for maple syrup, just make sure you find one that's 100% pure. So no Aunt Jemima's or anything like that. So maple syrup is another sweetener that I use fairly regularly. The third one I want to share with you is coconut sugar. So this is one I just tried, I think a year or 2 ago. It's pretty good because this is more granulated, so it's a better one-to-one substitute for regular table sugar than more of a liquid one like honey. So I like to use coconut sugar. It is less processed and it also has less of an impact on your blood sugar levels, which is one of the reasons why I like to use that one. The fourth one, so this is a sweetener that I just started using in the last couple of months. So I haven't tried baking, like any holiday baking with it, but that is monk fruit. Lacanato monk fruit is I think the brand. But this is another great one because it really will have minimal impacts on your blood sugar levels. It's GMO free, it's less processed. And so I've really been enjoying that one. It's also a granular sugar, so you can use it as a one-to-one substitute for regular sugar. So that is one that I think I might experiment with a little bit in some holiday baking this year. The 5th sweetener that I love, and maybe this is one of my favorites, but it's to use dates. So I love recipes that don't have any like honey or syrup or any other form of sugar, but just call for dates to sweeten it. I think that dates give food a really sweet flavor. Plus they have the fiber and so many other good nutrients in them that make them, a really healthy alternative. So that's a great one to use as well. So the other one, just kind of as a bonus tip, you can also use stevia. Personally, I didn't include it on the list just because I don't use it often, just because I haven't really found a stevia that I love the flavor of and I love to cook with. So if you have a stevia that you like and a stevia at home, then go ahead and use it. That's another great option. It's just not one that I personally have used very much. So those are my 5: honey, maple syrup, coconut sugar, monk fruit, and dates. And I just wanted to give you a couple extra tips on how to use them. But before I do that, I'm curious, which of these sweeteners do you already use? And are there any that you would be interested in trying this holiday season? So just let me know in the comments what ones you use and which ones you'd like to try. And while you're doing that, I want to share with you a couple extra tips about cooking with sugar. So the first thing is, now I just look for recipes that already call for honey or syrup or coconut sugar. I try to avoid the recipes that call for regular sugar because usually the other ingredients they're using aren't that healthy either. So there are so many healthy versions of recipes out there. My little secret tip is that I just search for paleo recipes. So paleo sugar cookie, paleo monkey bread, or whatever it is that you want, because when you don't have to eat paleo all the time, but when you look for paleo recipes, you know that you'll have good quality ingredients. So that's what I usually do. My second tip for you is that, let's say you have a favorite recipe that you want to just make a little bit healthier, and so you want to swap out the sugar. So if a recipe calls for regular sugar, you can definitely just swap out another one. Just like I said, be a little bit careful if it calls for regular table sugar. You might want to try coconut sugar or monk fruit instead of honey. Personally, I will substitute honey for sugar, and I don't think it affects the texture or the consistency, but that's kind of a personal preference thing, I think. My third tip for you, and this one I think is huge, this is why, I love to do my own holiday baking, is that I will almost always reduce how much of the sweetener it calls for. So let's say a recipe calls for a cup of honey. I think you'll find that as you eat healthier for longer and longer, you don't need as much sweetener for things to taste sweet to you. So instead of adding a cup of honey, I usually will cut it in half, and I'll start with half a cup. And then if I need to add a little bit more, I can. But that's just a great way. You're using a healthier sweetener, and to reduce how much you're using is a great way to just make your holiday treats just a little bit healthier. So that's what I tend to do as much as possible. Again, you might want to be a little bit careful. Sometimes that could change the consistency of what you're baking. I've never really had a big problem with it, but just something to kind of keep in mind. And then here's my last extra tip for you is this. So, like I said at the beginning, these sweeteners are healthier options, but they still are sweeteners, and they're made in things that are treats. So when you are going to eat a treat over the holiday, I would just highly encourage you to actually eat it mindfully. So sit down, enjoy it, slowly savor it, chew it thoroughly, and then you'll be so much less likely to want to go for a second and a third and a fourth one when you've actually taken time to enjoy the first one that you had. I've found that for myself numerous times, that when I take the time to enjoy my food, I don't feel the need to keep going back for more. So I would highly encourage you to try that this holiday season as well. So those are a few tips for you, and if you haven't already seen, I put together an updated version of my Healthy Holidays recipe roundup. So I just found, I think there's maybe 25 or 30 different recipes that I love to use over the holidays that are just healthier versions of different traditional recipes. So if you would love to get a copy of that guide, it has links to all the different recipes. I would love to send that to you for free. You can just go to ChristinaJohnsonWellness.com/holiday recipes. And I'll put that link above the video as soon as I'm done here. But if you go there, you can just give me your name and wherever you want me to send, whatever email address you want me to send the roundup to, and I'll get it to you right away. And then you'll have some ideas of different healthy alternatives for, there's desserts in there, there's healthy drinks, there's side dishes, just a variety of different things. So hopefully that will be very helpful for you this holiday season. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them below. And again, let me know, which sweetener are you wanting to experiment with this year? What are you willing to try? And if you have questions about where to find them or anything like that, just let me know, and I'm happy to help with that as well. So I hope that you have a great rest of the day, that you're enjoying your holiday season, and that you get to do some healthy holiday baking. I will talk to you next week. Bye.